Greetings in the name of Ngayami and Yasantua, all that is good and great, all that is blessed and beautiful, all that is creative and conscious, and all that is positive and possible. May the warm sun rays greet you each and every morning, and may your day always be full of joy. Hotep, I'm Adisa Olabayo-Bankole, your host to Mind Vibe Thoughts from a Curious Mind, a bi-monthly podcast series exploring and examining social phenomena then and now. Now, in this episode of Mind Vibe, I want to tackle something that a friend of ours, my queen and myself, have been lamenting about and was speaking about. And so I kind of deal with this title, Voices of Humanity, right? Because she was dealing with today's youth. Okay, but before we go there, I need you to hit that like button, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Now, Voices of Humanity. Quote unquote, to deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. Nelson Mandela. Recently, a long-time and dear friend of my queen and I entered a historical and philosophical conversation on the pros and cons of today's youth, particularly those that come out of the black community. She had lamented on what she sees as our black youth, our young black women, not having pride in themselves nor in their culture. She had remarked that when she sees a young sister rocking her fro and nicely dressed, she stops and compliments her because she feels that it is necessary that we encourage our people to be proactive in their cultural attitudes as well as just their presentation when they are in the public eye. Now, I think this was something that either Arthur Mitchell, who created Dance Theater of Harlem, or Alvin Ailey, American Dance Theater, I think either one of them stated that what they tried to do is to instill in his pupils, or what he tried to do is to instill in his pupils that when they are in the public, there is a way they must carry themselves, simply because it is not just themselves they represent, but also the theater company or the dance studios themselves or itself. The reason he gave was because he wanted the world to see the best of who we are, not only as ambassadors of his studio, but we as a people. During this conversation, I was with my friend, our friend, I was trying to convey the pros and cons of today's youth by somewhat comparing it to yesterday's movement. What I tried to deposit was the idea that between 1950s to the mid-70s, there were many factors that were there that is not here today, which is why those days seem energetic, raw, hopeful, and passionate, because it was the time they were not only questioning, particularly the white youth, were not only questioning but also reacting. In my podcast series, An Ode to Woodstock, the music festival that reshaped white America for the most part, I was dealing with my point of view and hindsight about the Woodstock event itself, with the commentary on the hippie movement, with the extension of other movements that were happening simultaneously. What I was dealing with in this expose was the need for the white youth to examine, excavate, and self-explore who they were and their place in this American project. At the same time, questioning how we as African Americans fit into the fabric of this American story. And in my explanation to this beautiful friend of ours, I commented on the fact that, again, there were many, many factors that made this period between the late 50s and mid 70s both exciting as well as frightening. Oh, I mean, because at that point, you had, particularly in the 60s, you had the simultaneous movements that were going on. You had, the Black Panther Party, the Civil Rights Movement, the hippie movement, the Flower Children movement, the Earth movements. You had all kinds of women's movement. You had all kinds of movements, all of them dealing with the idea of trying to create a better society, of a more humane society. However, I also reminded her that generations or two will be dealing with their voices, questioning their society as to what they believe to be unfair and unjust. We now live in a highly technological world, a world where both disinformation, as we continue to see about the 2020 election and the COVID-19 pandemic with regards to the vaccine, yet how quickly information can be transmitted, like the George Floyd incident or the January 6th insurrection, and just recently with the shooting of 4 innocent victims. These were, and this is one of the things about this generation dealing with gun violence. 4 victims. A young black man knocking on the wrong door, and an 84-year-old white man shoots him twice. A young, beautiful, aspiring young white girl. She drives up in the wrong, and then all of a sudden she gets shot. And it's just this kind of crazed mentality with particularly the GOP and the MAGA crowd, with having guns, but being paranoid about their own shadows. Everything they see, it creeps around. Danger around the corner, and we got to defend. It's all that kind of crazy nonsense. We have young people, as we did back then, take to the streets, use social media platforms to what we could not do back then. We didn't have that kind of. We didn't have cell phones and stuff back then. So when something happened, we didn't get the news until 2 or 3 days later. Now, it's instant. It's just like, bam, just like the George Floyd thing. Bam. It was, the whole world saw that brute kill George Floyd. The whole world got to see that beautiful brother's soul evaporate in front of their eyes. I had once said to my good brother Danjuma Madupi, who lamented that he doesn't see the creative expression being part and parcel of movements such as Black Lives Matter or the Me Too movement, as they were during the counterculture era. However, the way in which the creativity is being expressed in this era is not what we would normally think, nor can we say blanketly that there are no artists that are presenting and lending their expression today to today's stirring. You had back in 1999, I believe, the late Prince did, I Want to Party to 1999. He was dealing with, at the time, because Reagan was in, he was dealing with the horrors of nuclear war. Recently, some time ago, back in 2015, I believe, it was Beyonce who dealt with a music video dealing with police brutality. And also Common, a poet, did something about freedom. So there are voices and there's artistic things that are happening, right? And you have now the what we call the webisodes and stuff that you're seeing being uploaded on YouTube and stuff. So you're seeing things that are happening and transforming on social media platforms. It's not like what we used to see, like with Joni Mitchell and Big Yellow Taxi, or Crosby, Still, Nash and Young and Woodstock, or James Brown, Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. It's different. That's all. It's just different. Now, I agree with my good friend that representation matters. And we in the black community seem to have fallen backwards pre-Afro days. But with the Crown Act, a movement to allow blacks to wear their hair naturally without harassment, or the resurgence of a African historical excavation that I tend to see on social media, as a cultural family, we are definitely making the attempts to realign ourselves to our history and cultural pride. However, as I also said in my Woodstock series, human beings are human beings. There are always those who don't care about who and what they hurt via physically, emotionally, or culturally. They tend to be the vampires of the culture, vultures that will exploit for profit without any hint of remorse. And yes, there will always be in communities people who just don't give a damn. They don't, for some reason, see themselves as anything higher or noble than what they project. It is, unfortunately, the way of the humans. It is who we are as human beings. We, who are of an age and came through the golden age of movements that clamored for a humane society, may not always feel or recognize today's energy. Yet, we should still have hope. With activists like Tamika Mallory or Senator Mallory McMorrow, representatives like the Tennessee Three, and the voices of our youth. Again, though it may not be styles or voices of yesterday, such as the young lady who did, I believe it was Janice Ian, who did a song, Society's Child, in 1965. This was dealing with an interracial relationship. She was dealing and describing the fact that she brings her black boyfriend home, and her mother was like aghast and saying, no, you can't deal with that. And how the society crushed her emotionally, that she just left her black boyfriend, or that you had people like, or groups like Supreme, like Diana Ross, dealing with, Love Child, These were things, okay, yeah, we saw and we heard on the radio, but you can't take away today's voices. It is, however, voices for humanity. And with that, we should continue to do as Jesse Jackson's slogan goes, keep hope alive. This is, again, I know where my friend is coming from, because we both come from that period, and like I was saying to her before, there were a lot of things that was happening. We were getting countries that were emerging, such as the African countries like Ghana, getting its independence in 1954, 55, and then followed by Nigeria. And that. So you had all of these middle-class youth who had the money to go to these places like Brazil and Colombia, and they could see what Chiquita Brand was doing to that community. They could see what Goodyear Tire was doing to the African community. They could see what the orange soda or the Coca-Cola was doing. So they could bring all that back. But now, we see things in an instant. We know what's happening over there in Africa. We see now the Ukraine war, the invasion by the man-child of Russia to Ukraine. We can see it. It's uploaded. And we see the devastation that's happening. And so our youth react to that. And as far as the creativity goes, we're not, my friend and I, we're old fogies. We don't get on the YouTube and the Facebooks and the TikToks and all that stuff. So we have no idea about what creativity is happening. The rap musics. I remember, I think one person was dealing with, again, police brutality and the incarceration of black folks, and he did this real creative thing with steel bars and stuff. It was like, wow, And I just heard a beautiful piece called "Express Yourself" by Madonna, which again was like the 70s. I did a piece that I did a series called 70s Groove Message in the Music. And that was dealing with a lot of, self-help type of things, looking at yourself and loving yourself and stuff. Madonna did the same thing with this Express Yourself. So there's just a plethora of things that is happening. And I don't go to theaters that much now. So I don't know what was happening with the movies. I don't know what's happening with the theater. But what I do see is the youth, like they did back in, I think, 2018, when they had that shooting in Florida, when all of those beautiful young souls lost their lives. They did a whole, march on Washington. They gathered this whole march on Washington. It's such a beautiful sight. And this young lady out of Sweden, who just beautiful, beautiful soul, sat at her school day after day after day until she was joined by others because she was dealing with the climate change. And now you have young, Congress people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, beautiful person, and Bowman, and Ilhan Omar. You have young people like that are really dealing with what's happening with our climate. So I don't, I like to say to my friends, we shouldn't despair. Yes, the conservatives are striking hard. We see it across the state, particularly with this abortion thing now that the Supreme Court struck down. We see it happening, right? Particularly with these gun things that they're passing. And we see it happening with the climate. But we also see, like we did in the 60s and 70s, the pushback by the youth. And that is always something that we can hope that resonates, that will change. Because as both Bob Dylan sings, "A Change Gonna Come," and the brother who also sang about change, right? It's gonna come. No matter. So my thing is to this sister to do as Jesse Jackson says, keep hope alive, because we are seeing the stirrings of rebellion and revolution against the status quo. And usually, with the kind of energy, enthusiasm, and now the kind of intelligence that they're dealing with, and the lessons that they have learned from back when we were, yeah, there's something to applaud. Just like we did back in the 60s with those youth. And we should continue to try to deal with who and what they were and why they did what they did. Right? Because we will eventually, something has got to give. And my hope is always that humanity will win above all else. So this is a diesel bioback calling saying, may we all strive to bend the arc of justice towards humanity and believe that love and peace can be achieved. Madasi peace.